Here, read this.
Woof.
So last week in the Times, Graham Richardson, their poetry critic, reviewed Len Pennie's latest collection and described her as the worst Scots poet since William McGonagall. The review has, as I'm sure it was intended to do, attracted a lot of criticism and attention online, even talk of potential legal involvement pertaining to Richardson's accusation of plagiarism that he levels at Pennie towards the end of his review. I'm not going to talk about that today. I wanted to talk more about the association with McGonagall. She is, says Graham Richardson, and I say this with due awe and reverence, the worst poet to have emerged from Scotland since William McGonagall. Now, to be upfront about it, I don't like the poetry of Len Pennie. I think her poems are rubbish. But I also take great issue with this review. And the issue I take has to do with the exceptionalism. Singling Pennie out on one hand, and on the other hand, treating McGonagall like such an exceptional case. And this is something that you see repeatedly with discussion of McGonagall and discussion of modern poetry and Scots poetry in particular. Anyone who has interacted with poetry recently, whether that's in a magazine or reading new collections regularly or attending live events, will know that if William McGonagall turned up and shuffled on stage and read his poems, he would stand out as an unusually thoughtful poet and an exquisite craftsman. There is, in other words, nothing exceptionally bad about Len Pennie's poetry. That is just basically the standard of popular poetry, and it's well below William McGonagall. The supposedly unmatched badness of William McGonagall is a joke that I think has worn itself out, told mostly by worse and nervously giggling poets. Richardson, however, writes as if poetry is in a kind of golden age, and since McGonagall, nothing has come along that is quite as bad until Len Pennie. This is, on the face of it, disingenuous. You don't have to look any further than the poet laureate himself, whose recent collections are just as miserably insipid, faux modest, mawkish, and half-arsed as some of the works of Len Pennie, or indeed McGonagall, who frankly wipes the floor with him. So yeah, you do have to question why Graham Richardson has chosen to single Len Pennie out. Is it because she's a young woman who's very popular? Popularity is conventionally treated as a disqualification in the eyes of poetry critics. Or is it because Len Pennie comes from that funny old place, Scotland? Sorry, doesn't come from it, emerges from it. Emerges from it to the true place, England, where people just are and become. That's exactly the kind of lazy, bigoted mindset that turned William McGonagall into such a raucously funny joke. And today we see that it's alive and well, and keeping us blind to the fact that neither McGonagall nor Pennie are exceptions, but rather the rule.